Hello,
This is Professor
this
Satish
is
Saunani here.
Professor Satish Saunani here.
Also the
I am
CFO and
also the
compliance
CFO
officer
and
of
compliance officer of Altveda
Limited.
Fund Management Private Limited.
Before starting my
Before
presentation,
starting my
I would just
presentation,
like to
I
give
would
one
just like
disclaimer which I
to
have
give one
mentioned in the end
disclaimer
of
which
the
I have mentioned in the end of the
that
presentation here,
we have
that
taken all due
we
care to
have taken
compile
all due
all
care to
information from
compile
all
all
reliable sources.
information from all
But
reliable
anyone
sources,
acting on
but
any
anyone
suggestions
acting on
may
any
kindly
suggestions
consult
given
a
may kindly
professional tax
consult a
consultant
professional
before
tax
undertaking any
consultant
transaction.
before undertaking any
We,
transaction.
however, believe
We,
that
however, believe
this
that this presentation
will be both
will be
thought-provoking
both
and
thought-provoking and open your eyes to many regulatory changes as well as budgetary proposals
that
that impact your
current investments
current
target
investments and targeted
I
investments.
hereby start
I
my
hereby
slide
start my slide
with a special
with
thanks to all
a
of you
special thanks to
for
all of you for taking time from your extremely busy schedule. A
introduction
slide
of
on the
the sponsor
introduction
of
of the
today's
sponsor
seminar,
of today's seminar, Altveda Fund Management Private Limited. Altveda Fund Management Private Limited is a alternative investment fund and VCF fund manager. It is also having a PMS license in its own name. This is a brief history of the company. We are a SEBI registered intermediary. Altveda stands from wealth from wisdom. The investment philosophy is to generate superior risk-adjusted returns, which is statistically known as alpha. There have been many presentations given by my illustrious speakers, my preceders. They include Mr. Siddharth Shah, partner of Nishit Desai and Associates, one of the most renowned names in fund industry.
There was one more
on low income housing, next wave of growth in Indian real estate. This was presented by Mr. Harshit Mehta, CEO of Aadhar Housing Finance Private Limited, and earlier an ex-MD of ICICI Home Finance.
Now we straight away go
to budget proposals and your current target investment.
One of the most important
budgetary proposal was distribution tax on buyback of shares, which was not there on the statute till now. This will now be effective from 1st of June 2013. It is applicable to domestic unlisted companies. The income distributed by way of buyback will now be taxable at 20%. Consequently, the money received by a shareholder
will be tax
exempt. The distributed income will be the amount paid by the company on the buyback, less the amount received by the company on issue of shares, irrespective of whether that investor has subsequently sold his shareholdings to any intermediate shareholder at whatever rate. There will be a short-term window of 3 months to avail of capital gains treatment on buyback because this starts from 1st of June 2013. NCDs will now be a preferred mode of investment. Loan and buyout structures will continue to prevail. Distribution of profit by dividend distribution tax at effective tax rate of 14.52%, actual being 16.99, will be preferred over the buyback. A small example on this. Let us assume that XYZ is a private limited company which has issued 1,000 equity shares of 10 each
face value
to Mr. S
on 1st of April
on 1st of April 2013. 2003, and the issue price is rupees 20 per share.
If the shareholder subsequently sells the shares to B, let's say 40 per share,
on 1st April 2008, XYZ buys back these shares on payment of rupees 100 per share. If we take into account the cost inflation index of 2008-9 as 582 and 13-14 is likely to be around 900, then XYZ will have to pay distribution tax at 100 rupees, which is the price that it is paying, less 20 rupees, which was the amount it received at the time of issue of these shares. The DDT will be 20%, so it will come to 16 rupees on 1000 shares, with 16,000 rupees. We would have paid capital gains tax on 100 minus 62, that is after adjusting for cost inflation index, at is rupees 38 at 20%, that means 7,600. Commodities transaction tax has also been introduced in the current budget. It is important to note that agricultural commodities has been exempted from this. The CTT will be levied at 0.01% on sale of commodity derivatives. The deduction for this will, however, be eligible from such transactions and taxable as profits and gains of business or profession. Securities transaction tax. The bill has proposed to reduce the same. This is also with effect from 1st of June 2013. Delivery-based purchase of units of an equity-oriented fund or sale of units of an equity-oriented fund has been significantly reduced. Sale of futures in securities has also been reduced, and seller will have to now pay 0.01% instead of 0.017%. Insurance premium payments, there has been a small amendment made. In case of any person with disability or severe disability, as referred to in section 80U or section 80DDB, the premium can be paid which is up to 15% of the sum assured, and this will be allowed as a deduction under this section. Presently, the limits are 10% of the sum assured. The diseases mentioned in section 80U or 80DDB are certain neurological diseases, including dementia, and also certain physical diseases. One can easily refer to these sections for details. Another important amendment is the Rajiv Gandhi Equity Scheme, popularly called as Section 80CG scheme. The deduction is now available for investments made in listed units of an equity-oriented fund also. The investments will thus listed equity shares shall be allowed to the extent of 15% of the amount invested in such equity shares and units, but not exceeding rupees 25,000, provided the GTI of the SSE shall not exceed 12 lakhs. Previously, the limit was 10 lakhs. Another important change that has been done is the above deduction will be allowed for 3 consecutive years. Previously, it was just 1 year, beginning from the year in which such listed equity shares or listed units of equity-oriented funds are first acquired. Mediclaim schemes Section 80D. Currently, any contribution made by an individual or HUF under the central government health scheme is allowed. A modification has been made, and now deduction of contributions towards central government health schemes will be extended to other schemes which are to be notified by the government. A very important amendment has been made with regard to first-time purchasers of residential houses. But we should take care of some important conditions which are mentioned. First, an additional interest of 1 lakh will be allowed as a deduction on the loan taken by an individual from any financial institution, which is for the purpose of acquiring residential house property. Mind you, the loan amount has to be less than or equal to 25 lakhs. The value of the residential house property has to be less than or equal to 40 lakhs. The assessee should not be owning any residential house property on the date of sanction of the loan. It is not drawdown of the loan. Mind you, it is sanction of the loan. The deduction amount can be claimed up to 1 lakh, and if some balance remains from this, it can be claimed in the subsequent year also. A TDS provision has been made on purchase of immovable property. It is mentioned that any person, in other words, individuals, HUFs, firms, AOP, Association of Persons, BOI, Body of Individuals, LLPs, any person who is making payment for transfer of an immovable property other than agricultural land should deduct TDS at 1%. If the consideration for transfer is 50 lakhs or more. However, it is clarified that compulsory acquisition under any law shall not be covered by the TDS provisions on purchase of immovable property. Important amendment pertaining to foreign dividends. The taxation of foreign companies' dividend has been extended up till March 2014. No dividend distribution tax will be levied on subsequent distribution of such dividends received from a foreign subsidiary. An example has been given to show the implications if this dividend, if it takes place before 1st of June or after 1st of June 2013. The distributable profit in both the cases being 100, the dividend from foreign subsidiary being 50, the tax on dividend will be at 15%, that is 7.50. The net distributable profit will therefore become 142.50 in both the cases. However, we will now get credit for foreign dividend if it is done after 1st June. Thus, the distributable profit on which DDT will be payable will be only 92.50 instead of 142.50, saving DDT to the company. There are some other important regulatory changes which have had impact on investment. We will just go through some important changes. One critical change was a para in the budget speech that the recommendations provided in the report presented by FSLRC will be examined. Now, what does it mean? Presently, the regulators in the financial sector are 7: RBI, SEBI, IRDA, which is for banking, your capital markets and insurance markets. Then there is this Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority, Forward Market Commission, Securities Appellate Tribunal, DICGC, which stands for Deposit Insurance Credit Guarantee Corporation, and Financial Sector Development Council. What is proposed to be done now? Well, presently this number 7 is being proposed to be increased to 8. RBI, the Debt Management Office of RBI. See, presently RBI acts as a player in the debt management as well as a referee, being a regulator. So this inefficiency of the financial sector of Indian market is being sought to be removed by creation of a separate debt management office. We will have RBI, the Financial Sector Development Council, but what will be critical will be a formation of a new agency known as United Financial Agency. This will be done by the proposed merger of SEBI, IRDA, PFRDA and FMC. This will reduce the fights that sometimes take place between two regulators of a transaction which overlap between two or more regulators. One is already aware that in 2010-11 IRDA and SEBI had some fights about who should regulate some insurance companies. When they proposed to do a transaction where SEBI also had some purview, RBI also had some purview. There is a proposal to have a resolution corporation who might take on the role of a referee amongst all these regulators. So the referral role might get shifted out from this. There are some very important capital market proposals which are proposed by the finance minister. He has repeatedly told time and again that he wants to improve the investor climate and attract the foreign investors and foreign capital. He is proposing to do some of the measures that he has announced are having designated depository participants to register the foreign portfolio investors subject to KYC, implement uniform registration and other norms for entry of foreign portfolio investors in consultation with SEBI, converging of various different KYC norms and adopting a risk-based approach. This will help attract capital and money from certain central banks, sovereign wealth funds, university funds, pension funds and so on. A clear-cut distinction between FII and FDI is sought to be implemented. The cutoff limit has been kept as around 10%. A committee will be constituted to examine the application of this principle and work out the details thereof expeditiously. Next is about FII, foreign institutional investors. They are now being allowed to participate in the exchange traded currency derivative segment, but to the extent of their Indian rupee exposure in India. In other words, FII will be now able to hedge their exposures, and this will help them to pump in some additional funds into the country. We all know that India is convertible on the current account, but it is not yet fully convertible on the capital account. This allowance by the finance minister is a creeping movement towards going towards capital account convertibility, but I still believe it is some way off. FIIs will also be permitted to use their investment in the corporate bonds and G-Secs as a collateral to meet their margin requirements. We have also got the angel investors who will be now recognized as Category 1 AIF venture capital funds. The necessary requirements is expected to be prescribed soon. For the information of all, AIF stands for Alternative Investment Funds. There are 3 categories. Category 1, where government gives certain incentives and subsidies, pass-through status. Category 3, where hedge funds normally come in that category. And category 2, what does not fall in either of these 2 categories. SME listing. SME is small and medium enterprise listing. As many of you will be will also be knowing that both the Bombay Stock Exchange and the National Stock Exchange have set up their own separate SME exchange. You can list your company even with 10 crore of capital, and all the advantages of listing of shares are available in any exchange will also be available to a small and medium entrepreneur if he is listing his shares in the BSE SME exchange or the NSE SME exchange. The benefits of listing to the investor, quite immense. Today, if you sell the shares of a SME company, because they are not listed, you have to pay 20% capital gain tax. But assume that the sell leg of the transaction you want to do after you have listed the shares on the SME, you save a flat 20%, which definitely will be a big sum for quite a few investors. This is tax planning and not tax evasion, my union. You are trying to take advantages of certain concessions given in the tax laws for the structuring of your own transactions, and you can continue to hold your head high by taking advantage of these structuring of these transactions. Then the question comes about the debt market. Stock exchanges will now be allowed to introduce a dedicated debt segment on the exchange. The banks and also the primary dealers will be the trading members of this segment. Insurance companies, provident funds, pension funds will be permitted to trade directly in this debt segment, of course with the approval of the concerned sectoral regulator. These proposals are to be finalized in consultation with SEBI. These are the same things which are repeated for your benefit. The most important point will be the last line, that is the list of eligible securities in which the PFs and pension funds may invest will now be enlarged to include ETFs, debt mutual funds, and asset-based securities. How does it all impact you? Well, if so many players are being attracted to the capital market, there is higher liquidity for your investments. You can get a higher price realization for your investments, which result from the higher demand, resulting in better returns for you. There is a perceptible improvement in investment climate. There will be more forex inflows because hedging is allowed, and lot of incentives have been given for the FII FDI inflow. The forex reserves will increase. This will result in the depreciation of the rupee being arrested. The reduction will take place in the cost of imports because of this arrest in the depreciation of rupee, and even ordinary people who pay higher price for the petrol and diesel can get some relief indirectly by this inflow of foreign exchange and a stronger balance of payment position of the country. There is one more slide I would like to take an opportunity to introduce to you. We always talk of taxation in terms of direct tax like income tax and wealth tax, so on, and for indirect tax through service tax, excise duty, sales tax, and so on. I would like you to expand your vision. Let us see what is inflation. Inflation is also because of too much money chasing too few goods, and this too much money has come into the system because of the printing of additional notes. And why are these things being done? To finance the fiscal deficit. This fiscal deficit has been essentially created by the government. If instead of printing notes, if it goes for additional borrowings, then the space for private borrowings from the same market reduces. All these government actions is one of the major causes of inflation. And there are many people who regard inflation as caused mainly due to government action, and so it is also in the nature of a tax but not shown as tax in the records. It is in the nature of hidden tax. That's why it is always a prudent principle that all CFPs, CFAs, chartered accountants who advise their clients to look at the post-tax, post-inflation adjusted returns. There are many people in our country who, for them, investments is just deposit the money into a recurring bank account or into a fixed deposit bank account. Is it a wise step to do so? You get a feeling that you are getting 8%, 9%, 10%, but it is a nominal increase. What is actually happening is, hypothetically, if you are getting 10% interest and if you are in the 30% tax rate, you end up paying 3% tax. And by government statistics, we are having roughly inflation of around 8% in the previous year, and they are talking of a wholesale price index, whereas people like you and me have to actually look at consumer price index. So there will be an erosion of capital and erosion of principal. Forget about returns. I will now talk about some important tax proposals which have impacted domestic funds. The most important is pass-through status. Presently, all venture capital funds are given this tax pass-through status. under section 10(23) FB. Section 10 lists down various subsections where income is exempt. So all VCFs do not have to pay any tax on the income that they generate. SEBI has introduced AIF regulations which categorize domestic funds into category 1, category 2 and category 3. These regulations provide that category 1 are those which has a positive spillover effect on the economy. There is various categories, subcategories of category 1. Presently, category 1 AIF has got a pass-through status. The earlier VCFs continue to be exempt from tax. Other category of AIFs are not yet got the pass-through status. Tax on distributed income by securitization trust. From 1st June, any SPV created and defined as per SEBI public offer listing of securitized debt regulations will be included in that. Any income which is distributed by a securitization trust to the investors has to pay tax in case of payment to individuals or HUFs at 25%, in case of payment to persons at 30%. However, if the investor is such whose income is exempt from tax, then no tax has to be deducted. The investors who will receive the income do not have to pay any tax on this money that we receive from securitization trust. So one can think of reallocation and rebalancing your portfolio by having some investment in such trust. There is a private trust and pass-through certificates are created. Then these trusts used to say that the income should be taxed in the hands of investors, whereas tax authorities used to levy tax on them, treating it as business income. This has been a matter of litigation and it is sought to be curtailed. Various other regulatory changes which you should be aware besides the income tax, because it has an impact on your investment, your NAV, your returns. Mutual funds. SEBI in its recent circular has now allowed investors to directly subscribe to the various schemes rather than going through various advisors. In such a case, a different NAV will be there, and in case of subscription through any advisor, a different NAV is there. There is an expectation that there will be a difference of around 30 basis points or so in such cases. You may therefore opt to go for direct subscription as long as you are comfortable with the fund house. AIFs I have already discussed in detail, so I won't repeat. Portfolio management services was revised by SEBI in Feb 2012, previous year. The most important thing is that the limits have been changed, have been increased from 5 lakhs to 25 lakhs. I would now like to end my presentation by thanking Mr. Bikram Sen, the CEO of my company, Ms. Shamla Asangi, Mr. Mazban, and Mr. Somin from my communications and PR team, Ms. Suchi Pandey and Ms. Ruchi, who are from my legal and compliance team, and also the management and employees of DHFL Group and its associate companies, as well as the employees of Advaita Fund Management, who gave me an opportunity to express my views. This is a standard disclaimer clause. I end my presentation with Satyameva Jayate. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Savlani. You have indeed demystified the budget proposals where personal and corporate taxes are concerned. We are now ready to take questions from our audience. To provide questions or ask questions during the webinar, you have two options. Please utilize the question box provided on the screen, or click the raise your hand button on the webinar menu to alert us. Here's the first question to Mr. Savlani. Do individuals or HUFs also need to deduct TDS on purchase of immovable property?
Yeah. The answer is yes, because the budget proposals talks about any person. So even if you are an individual and if you don't want to get into the hassle of TDS and so on, but the law now wants to track high value immovable property transactions. So even if you are a karta of an HUF, or if you are an individual buying a property in your individual name, you still have to deduct TDS from the payments that you will be making to the counterparty. There is one small exemption available. In case of an agricultural property, you need not deduct the TDS. And second, in case there is a compulsory acquisition, again these provisions will not apply. So if you are buying an agricultural land, then the provisions of TDS will not apply. Of course, the limit of 50 lakhs is also there. So if you are buying a property worth 40 lakhs, 49 lakhs, then there is no requirement of deducting TDS.
Hello, sir.
There has been one important change that has taken place in the current budget proposal. They have also now included that if you invest in the units of equity oriented mutual fund, then such investments are also eligible for Rajiv Gandhi Equity Savings Scheme. In case of a first-time investor whose income is less than 12 lakhs, now investments in equity mutual fund will also be eligible for this deduction. And mutual fund, जैसे हमारी दादी माँ के नुस्खे होते थे, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So by putting it in MF as compared to a direct investment in a mutual fund, direct investment in equity market, it will give you, it is hope that with the high degree of probability that you will get the benefit.
Thank you. You can, audience, you can raise your hands and we'll give you a chance to ask questions.
Thank you for the question. As I informed that AIF regulations were notified by SEBI on 21st May 2012. Its predecessor was SEBI's Venture Capital Fund regulations. In the earlier regulations, the minimum ticket size of investment in a VCF was rupees 5 lakhs only. However, in the AIF regulations, SEBI, looking at the nature of investments, and it is basically in the nature of high risk, high return at a macro level. So it has increased the ticket size from 5 lakhs to 1 crore. This will essentially help in having only informed investors becoming an investor of AIF. However, people are trying to find a way out and investing through a, say, partnership firm or an LLP or a company where a group of friends pool in their money either as capital or in some other way. However, the minimum ticket size, to answer your specific question, is rupees 1 crore.
Rahul Hirawat wants you to guide on the TDS rule. He is asking, if a resale flat deed is closed before 31st March 2013 and payment has also been done, but the registration is done in May 2013, then does the TDS rule, is it applicable? And also, if there is a difference in agreement value and market value, so shall the additional TDS need to be deducted or not?
Your question has 2-3 subparts. First, I will go as per law, and second, I will flag off some concerns that how the ITO may treat it as. It is a question of interpretation first. Under the Contract Act, if two parties who are able to contract enter into any transaction, including transaction of property, then it becomes a contract once the offer has been accepted. However, as per the Registration Act, all such things need to be in writing. In case of properties in certain states, it does not get concluded till it is registered. So it will be definitely a matter of litigation where the tax officer will try to say that you have registered the property and it became a conclusive contract only at the time of registration. So it is better that we try to register this property in the coming 2 weeks to avoid any litigation with the tax authorities. And there was one more question. I will come, sorry for the interruption. There was one more question about TDS, whether the TDS has to be deducted on the value which was agreed or on the stamp duty value. Let us see that there were two separate sections which have been proposed by the Finance Minister. I would like to introduce a caveat that a lot of lobbying is going on with the Finance Minister to dilute some of these provisions, but the budget proposal as it stands today is TDS has to be done on the agreed value between the two parties. However, for the purpose, the seller will have to include the stamp duty value in his books if the difference between stamp duty value and the agreed value is more than 50,000. But the TDS section did not refer to the stamp duty value for the purpose of TDS, so we can go as per the agreed value between the two parties and which was registered.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a question from Mr. Savnani. If property is bought in the joint name and let's say the agreement value is 80 lakhs and it is equally upon, still there is a need to deduct 1% TDS or it has to be per person 50 lakhs?
The way there was some discussion even among the pre-budget proposals, the stance that the tax department is going to take is that both are co-owners of the property and a transaction has taken place with the counterparty who has received 80 lakhs. The finance minister in the budget speech has said that the intention of introducing such thing was to track high value business transactions, and the limit was kept as 50 lakhs. So this spirit will be lost if we try to introduce co-owner concept and say each one is having a different, it should be subdivided amongst each of the co-owners. For example, if I take this further, there can be 10 co-owners and you can have a 5 crore property and still avoid payment of any TDS, which is not the intention of the finance minister. So you will have to deduct TDS. Mind you, this is not a tax. This is TDS. That means later on, if the seller can take benefit of various capital gains, section 54F, or for redeployment of these funds in housing property or in any other manner, can show that he was not liable to pay tax, then definitely he pays lesser advance tax after adjustment of his TDS, or even claim a refund from the tax authorities.
Right. Thank you.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Hello.
Okay, I think there is some technical problem. Here's another question. As per your view, how much time is India going to take to move towards a full capital account convertibility? And what will be the effect of the same on the Indian financial system?
Well, I do not lay any claim on being an astrologer. This is a question which is very difficult to answer. When the current account convertibility was introduced, at that time too, it was always forecast that we shall do it soon. Then the Asian crisis, Far East Asian countries crisis took place and RBI became cautious. Subsequently, now there has been a crisis amongst the Eurozone countries, and this is showing that RBI is proceeding carefully in the matter, and this has proved to be beneficial to India. Had we gone in for full capital account convertibility immediately, then there could have been some crisis for the Indian economy. Now, everything has its own pros and cons. But I do agree that जैसे मंगनी के बाद शादी में बहुत ज्यादा डिले नहीं करना चाहिए, वैसे capital account, full capital account convertibility should follow soon, but with adequate safeguards. RBI is proceeding along these lines, and if you run through the FDI policy, the various notifications, RBI has calibrated its approach and moving towards it. But one of the pre-requirements of full capital account convertibility, there have been many committees, including Taraporwala committee, set up by RBI, where it tries to seek an answer to this question about when we should go for it. There are issues. We have a huge fiscal deficit, around 5.1, 5.2%, and it should be brought down to the level of around 2.5 before this takes place. So we definitely need improvisations. Our capital market are akin, almost similar to a developed world. Our debt market is still lagging behind. Our banking is coming to terms. Basel III norms are banking is quite firm or stronger footing compared to many of the international banks, and you have to reassess the whole thing. The Financial Sector Legislative Reform Commission that I spoke about also needs to be there in place, because you cannot have so many regulators and each trying to have a line of distinction about what comes into his or her territory as compared to us. So we have to sort out quite a few issues. So it is not going to take place very soon, but it is advisable that we sort this out so that we will be regarded as a real superpower.
Rajan Bhatia, please ask the question.
Hello.
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 Rajan Bhatia.
Yeah, I'm Rajendra Bhatia here.
Yeah. Welcome, Rajendra Bhatia.
Now, just taking forward this your TDS on real estate or immovable properties. Does that mean that every individual will have to take a TAN number and then comply with those TAN returns from time to time? Because people could be buying one property.
I agreed. Mr. Bhatia, I am myself. I know. Mr. Bhatia, I am myself an accountant also, besides being a compliance officer, and I know the hassles that one has to go.
My perspective of asking the question is, sir, my perspective of asking the question is that I am a CFP, and I would be getting these questions from the clients.
Yes, Mr. Bhatia, the gist of your question was, it is impossible to expect an ordinary individual to get the TAN numbers and so on. And is it really a requirement? Well, today, every citizen of the country is expected to follow the law passed by the parliament. Okay. But after this thing has come in place, I can assure you, lot of lobbying has taken place by the builders, by the developers, by real estate focused funds, by certain professional bodies to get this diluted. But I believe government is trying to catch high value transactions and may try to get some way in which it gets this. So my belief is that he may not relax this provision so easily. And if it so happens, today you can get a TAN number by applying to NSDL, and it does come within 2 to 3 weeks. So it is not same in the same. It is definitely a cumbersome process. No, but if you don't get a TAN number, then how do you deduct the TDS, how do you pay the TDS, and how do you ensure that the counterparty gets the credit in Form 26 AS, which is also reflected on the website. So exactly. Certain procedural formalities will have to be complied with, and I think CBDT will be given the task of coming out with some notification or a midway out of this. Presently, the way it stands, yes, individuals will also have to pay TDS on purchase of immovable property.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Sir Satish, can I ask one more question?
Well, we are just running short of time, but okay, please do it. I will also give you my personal mail ID to all the attendees. My email ID is satish.saunani, that is my name dot surname @Altveda, my company name, ARTHVEDA.co.in. In case I am unable to answer the questions of other people, then do feel free to send me an email and I will try to answer the same.
Thanks very much, sir.
Due to paucity of time, we cannot take any more questions. However, we are going to answer all your questions in an email. Mr. Savlani has given all of you his personal email ID. Plus, you can also mail your questions at to pr@arthveda.co.in and we'll make sure that we answer all your queries. We at Arthveda would like to say thank you to all of you who registered and attended our webinar. And it was really wonderful that so many of you were able to attend. For those who want to download the webinar recording, please go to youtube.com/Arthveda, or you can also visit our website and download our this webinar plus our past webinars. We are also pleased to invite you to the next webinar, and this is in a continuing series designed to address critical issues of importance to the children investors. Our next webinar is on April 16th, presented by Dr. Vikas Gupta, who is our investment research head and who also heads the traded markets vertical. The webinar will be on value investing in equities, and it's on 16th April, 4 to 5 p.m. Thank you once again, all of you, and